Hello, I'm the Movie Maestro. Well, I promised you in my last video that I would do another Coen Brothers film. So, with that, let's take a look at one of my all-time favorites from them, and one of my all-time favorite comedy films in general. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The premise is simple. 3 convicts living in Mississippi during the Depression years escape from their labor and basically go on a hair-raising adventure trying to find their way back to wherever the so-called ringleader of the trio, played by George Clooney, is supposedly looking for. And basically, it's a simple road trip movie with lots of bizarre twists and turns, encounters with obstacles and strange things, but there are certainly a lot of interesting standout moments for it. So, yeah, this is basically a road trip movie, except, well, there's a much more specific setting to it. And certainly it's a very fascinating one at that, and certainly very entertaining. Probably the most entertaining one, though, is the fact that the main plot device is when the 3 of them accidentally come across a small recording studio and record several old tunes under the title of the Soggy Bottom Boys. And it just ends up becoming a sleeper hit without their knowledge. And it makes for a pretty good running joke, let me say. This film is absolutely hilarious. This is probably one of the best comedy films I have ever seen, and I've seen quite a lot of pretty amusing comedy films. This one just pulls all the stops, and every moment just works so well for me. I could not stop laughing half the time throughout this one. This easily makes my top 10 for comedies. And I think it's just partially because there's so many well-timed running jokes, the characters are so colorful and likable, and all these strange twists and turns that the 3 characters go through are just so bizarre, but so interesting. And I do like how the Coen brothers actually claim that this was supposedly based on The Odyssey by Homer, even though apparently they never actually read it. However, with that said, there are some nods to The Odyssey. There is an encounter with sirens, there's a semi-Cyclops character who is played by John Goodman, and there is that constant barely missing something that's looking for them that could just help them get what they feel like they would need to live a prosperous life. The characters themselves, played by George Clooney, John Turturro, and Tim Blake Nelson, are very amusing in their own way. George Clooney's constant obsession with his hair, his very demanding, push-offy attitude almost, John Turturro's gruff attitude, Tim Blake Nelson's ridiculous levels of innocence, particularly in the aftermath of the siren scene, priceless through and through. They make this movie. Cinematography's pretty too. Roger Deakins, who regularly is the director of photography for the Coen brothers, once again delivers a nice, pleasant atmosphere that feels very real and never distracting. And also, the soundtrack is very good too. There isn't that much incidental music in it. It's mostly a compilation of recordings of old tunes that were popular at the time, but they work very well, and it makes for a very good soundtrack. Really deserved its Grammy Award. In fact, I'm especially impressed with the song that the 3 men record under the name of the Soggy Bottom Boys, though I don't know if that's actually George Clooney doing the singing, because it doesn't really sound like him. It sounds like a completely different voice. But if it is Clooney, kudos, and give him more chances to sing. I'd like to hear him sing more if he can actually sing that good. I mean, if Priscilla, Queen of the Desert can be a Broadway show in spite of the fact that all the songs are just them lip-syncing to older tunes, I think Oh Brother, Where Art Thou can make a musical too. It'd be a very good one. Really, the only things that I'm not 100% sure about with this film are maybe a couple 2 mean-spirited characters and maybe 1 or 2 plot elements that seem a little bit too pointless, though I can definitely argue against those points, however. For one thing, this is a road trip movie, so there are going to be a lot of bizarre detours here and there that won't have much of a point, but it's all part of the journey. And the mean-spiritedness of some of the characters is very much part of the very nature of a lot of people living during this time period, so I can definitely give that a free pass. On the whole, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is definitely one of my all-time favorite comedy films. It might not be my #1 spot, but it definitely makes my top 3. It's well acted, it's well timed, it's a very thought-out story, soundtrack's great, the cinematography's great, the character development's pretty good too in many respects, and it has a very wonderful, satisfying conclusion in many respects. If you haven't seen this film for some reason, definitely check it out. It's worth your time. It's very, very entertaining. I can't say that this movie is exactly for everybody. I mean, it's not laugh out loud funny the entire time, and it's not quite so slapsticky, but it's very, very clever comedy at that. So if you're curious, definitely see this. On the worth meter, I would give this a solid worth owning. And for my money, this is a 5 out of 5 star film. Thank you for your time.